Around the world, artists are using digital technology to speak their mind. These artists show us that a physical studio is not needed, using the virtual world to question the reality we live in. As part of Power Play, an exhibition championing the African digital art scene, we will explore how these artists create. These are some of their desktops.
My name is Oliver Hunter Pirelli, also known as Scumboy. I stay in Cape Town, South Africa, and I do like 3D animation, 3D graphic design, motion design, anything to do with 3D shit I do. I was on Instagram a lot, and I was seeing a lot of these like really cool, you know, like the classic Instagram artists that do like satisfying videos and shit like that, and like I was just all up in the art community of like the 3D world, and I was like, fuck, that's really cool. I want to learn how to do that. I think I spent like a solid year actually figuring out how the software works and just like going back and forth and being like, no, that's shit, let me try again. By the end of like 2018, I was like, this is really cool. Maybe I could like actually turn this into something. And then it just picked up, and yeah, I'm like completely engulfed in it. Like I love it now. So there was like a lot of influence of like digital art. And I was on Tumblr at like a young age, and I always used to see like emo shit and like a lot of like PSK or Bring the Horizon mixed with like weird graphic art, and I like fucked with that shit hard. So I was like, this is cool. So I think there was like a lot of like understanding from a young age that digital art was like a big thing, and it was gonna be quite like influential. I think I just hopped on that shit as fast as I could. I was hanging out with like 30-year-olds, and I was like this 16-year-old kid. And like somebody just called me like a scum child or a scum boy, and I was like, that's cool. And then I kind of like took ownership of it. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna stick with that, and that way like I control what it is, you know. I have more power over it by saying, yeah, I'm a fucking scumbag, let me just work with that, you know. So yeah, it was mostly just a control thing, I think, just to have some kind of control and power over like what was being said already. So this is my desktop. I need to do like a huge cleanse of it, because there's just like random stuff everywhere. Whenever I create, like, this is just PDFs, there's random images there, screenshots. I've tried to put them into some kind of like collection, but it's a mess. Okay, so this is just my prints. This is where I just put like random shit that I just make, and I feel like it's finished. I'm just like, all right, let's just put it in here. So that would include like this Piccolo, which is Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z, and he's wearing Adidas. I like to go on Sketchfab, which is this online artist platform where you can just like download models and stuff, and then you can just like alter them as you want. And I saw like a Piccolo, just a blank Piccolo, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. So I downloaded it, I fucked around with it, but I was like, what if he was doing this? And then, yeah, that's mostly how it goes. I think it's just the fact that I can take something that's that is like everyday, like the human form is an everyday object that's like everywhere, and we interact with it all the time. And I really like the idea of being able to just put it into the software and just being able to take it and do something with the body that we physically can't actually achieve. Like that's what drew me into 3D also, was the fact that I could create these worlds, and things that I can't achieve in real life, I can 100% achieve in this like make-believe world that I've created for myself. So like I can make the human body do whatever it wants. These are all my really old ones. And at this point I was still trying to like figure out how it works, like how the software works. So I was like, I'm gonna use this as basically like a test. And you can see like it's really low quality. Like the source was just like a square that I just like squished down, and I was like, sick. And you can see it's like really low poly. Overall, terrible job. I remember being very impressed with myself, because I made this bowl, and then I went online and found a really cool texture. And that was when I first learned how to like somewhat texture things, but not really, more like just wrap like a picture around it. And I remember being like, okay, well, this is it. I've clearly like mastered 3D design, never have to do it again. I'm doing great. Yeah, the chopsticks are defying gravity again. Yeah, I think this is where like I've always liked the idea of like color blocking and having like two colors that work well together, and then just having them like very strongly present in the background. This, I think I was just fucking around with like particle systems. This is completely just me like testing things out, and then just decided to put a stick through it for some reason. Don't know why, but yeah, this was me just experimenting. And I think I was also experimenting with liquids at this point as well. This one was cool. This one was when I was going through like my hypersexual, just like super gay phase. And I was also like experimenting with different lights, and I still clearly no textures because these plants are just dead. Very 2D, nothing much going on there. Usually what I would start out is by adding my plane, then I'd throw in my sky dome, and that's a classic thing. Always have to have my sky dome. And these are either things I've things I've downloaded or I've sculpted. Okay, easy 500 source. There we go. Then let's throw that in there. So I haven't done anything with this yet, but I plan on doing something. Not too sure what. So what I would do is we would make like an x-axis plane, and we would just bump that shit up like all the way. The one I usually always use, my go-to, is Vintage Measuring Lab. I don't know why, but it literally just the light that comes out is beautiful. It makes golds look really great. Another one is the inside of a circus tent. And if I'm doing something that's more like modern and it requires like a neon kind of tinge to it, the inside of a circus tent is great. Usually I have a lot more going on, and I would maybe make changes to the sneaker, change the specular, change the roughness, add like a bump map if necessary. But let's see. So that's what it looked like before. So you can see it kind of adds a bit more of like, I can't really use any fancy words because I'm not like taught properly. I taught myself. So I'm just going to say it looks a lot better, like the color. What I would do is up the render quality, change the AA to like something a lot higher. Maybe I would change the shoelaces. I really think I just want to work with the Yeezys and maybe make it something that I would prefer. I love the way they are. Like I fucking love them, but maybe I would maybe make the sole bigger, or sometimes I would just have a look at the different things that I would change. Turn the lower half here into what we call an end cloth. So it literally can be pumped full with air, or can deflate, or something like that. This one was a combination of Maya, but I also, before even going into Maya, I am using the software from Adobe called Substance Painter, which is also fucking cool, which allows me to literally like paint on textures. This, as you can see, I'm like super into just like streetwear. I'm just trying to get like some cash. Like if Nike or North Face or Adidas would just like slide into my DMs and just want to work with me, sick. I think that one was a video of this like hairy monster guy just like on a stage. I only said like Blue Man Poo because I thought of the Blue Man Group as a dude on stage and he's covered in hair. It's a stupid joke. I was just like, he's blue, he's on stage, cool. I moved to Cape Town going on about 3 years ago. So now I live in Cape Town, yeah. Salt River, Cape Town. Yeah, so I live in Salt River, which is more of like an industrial type of area. I'm about here. I'm not gonna say exactly where I live. Somewhere around here. Yeah, I think like the main reason why Cape Town really just like drew me in was because of its art scene. Like it's very art forward. I think within the queer scene and maybe the more like modern scene, that also has to do with like activism and kind of turning over the like whiteness of Cape Town and South Africa. I think they are more open to digital art and like more art that isn't focused directly around like white guys that are just doing absolutely nothing. Some, like if I were to get into a certain gallery, I don't think I could just because of like my art style, or maybe because like they are mostly looking for like a certain type of person. So some aspects of it are very inclusive. A lot of aspects no, because it's literally built on a colonized country. So it is my culture, but it's also not my culture because I am still like a white South African that's a part of like colonized Africa, you know? I think a portion of being, I think I wouldn't say that I am an African artists. I would say I was raised in South Africa, and that has like given me a certain background to be able to do certain things. And I think like I think it's fucking cool that the UK or like you guys are like paying attention to what's happening down here, because the amount of shit that we're producing is insane. You know, the black and queer and people of color artists that are just making magic in South Africa is beautiful. You know, and in like the whole of Africa. The crazy thing is, the gallery, this one, Gallery Momo, was more for like young up and coming queer and like digital artists. This one was more of like established artists, very like fancy, like they serve like wine and champagne, and whereas Momo, they had like popcorn and shit, and I think they had like beers, which was more along like our kind of scene. So there's a clear divide, and I think the crazy thing was that the opening shows happened on the same night, so you would have a mixture of all these like fancy, like white hetero fancy people coming out of this one, and then you would have like literally like me and like my friends and like just groups of like queer kids just like fucking about here, and then you would have like a mesh of them just joining together. I don't know, Cape Town is very connected, you know. There are definite, if you go out of like the CBD of Cape Town, you can see the difference between like the more like city Cape Town and then the more rural areas. But in the city, there's a whole bunch of like different galleries just like mixed up next to each other. The exhibition is about like power play and like how that adds into it. And the first thing I could think of was like having to like escape or like try and find power and the lack of power. And I think that came from like a lot of my past situations and like places I've been to emotionally and like physically. I have an intense relationship with like power and not having power and the lack of power. It was all about myself and maybe the different stages I've been in regards to my like lack of power. This was the first idea. I always wanted it to be like something to do with like glass or like a cellophane see-through kind of material. That was my plan all along, like to have like a body like the human form and kind of interact with like glass or like interesting glass sculptures and these different like boxes, and I just wanted to cover things in like this in literally like cling wrap. I thought, fuck, that looks cool. Let's just take things that you like wouldn't be covered in cling wrap and let's just like cover it. So this was my first plan. I was like, okay, it's a person in a box. They're like a glass box with some gold fringe and a little bit of texture. But for some reason, it just didn't seem as like hard hitting as I wanted it to be. It didn't really it just seems bland, you know. There's no emotion. It's just, oh, there's like some random person in a fucking box and that's it. I need something that maybe has a little bit more like chutzpah, if anything, you know. You know what it is? It's almost as if somebody took like cling wrap, wrapped it around somebody, and then maybe froze it or kind of like crystallized it, so maybe it still has that like cling wrap look and feel, but it's also more like you can see there's a lot of like the hard edges. It's I think the poly count is a lot lower than what it would usually be for like a normal smooth cling wrap look. The like cling wrappy glass is I create a polygon that's a ball and then size it down according to like his specifications, and then you throw on like a shrink wrap deformer, and then that kind of puts it in place. But then you have to kind of like get in there with the different faces and align it to his body a little bit better, because I didn't want him to be able to break free. These hands come out, the leg is out. And originally I just wanted him to stay in there. But I think technically I could make it better, but maybe the fact that he's like half escaping works nicely. This guy I liked. This one is more of an angry escape emotion, if that makes sense. When the other guy is like dancing, he's chill, whatever. This guy is like freaking the fuck out, I think. The people mostly are like blank canvases. Like you said, like you can kind of put what you feel onto it. You know, you can copy and paste your face and just like put onto that shit. And if you resonate with that, then yeah, you know, I just don't want it to be too made for like, it's not made for anybody, you know. It's my feelings, and it's me saying maybe you feel the same way. There's no agenda to like anything I do, but I still don't want it to be like a narrow piece, you know. I don't want it to only resonate with like one or two people, you know, or resonate with me only. I think it needs to resonate with as many people as possible. To be honest, like, I just make whatever the fuck I want. I wish there was more like thought behind what I make. There's not a lot of like of me just thinking like, okay, how is this gonna affect people? Like in certain aspects it does, because I think you have to like make sure you're not releasing something that's like incorrect or harmful. But I don't take myself as seriously in terms of like thinking about a whole bunch of like shit like that, you know. I make what the fuck I want to make, and then I put it out there, and if anybody feels the same way, then sick, you know. Sometimes like I compare it to like going into just like this trance when I work, because I just like sit in front of my computer for like hours and whatever. It just feels like I don't really have much control over what comes out. It kind of is just me expressing myself, and then I'm like, all right, this one's done. Let me just fucking post it and see what people think, you know. I'm glad people like it, you know. These are just where I get all my ideas from, or like a lot of my inspiration. I'll see shit, I'm like, whoa, that's sick. Let's try to throw that in here somehow. We got Biggie Smalls here with like this really cool, almost like liquidy metal chrome. This is a meme that I thought was hilarious. The renders I make for Instagram to grow my following. And it's 100% accurate. It's a lot of Instagram, and then also Behance. I fuck on Behance a lot. And also just a lot of like watching films. I remember watching Alien and being like, I need to make an egg. I need to make an alien egg. And so I kind of made whatever the fuck this is. This was purely just for the fun. And I just wanted it to be like gross and slimy. This one I got inspired by just like looking outside. And this one was also during the time when we didn't really know what was happening with the virus. But I like that one. Yeah, it's a good one. I think I want to make more filters that kind of actually have like art of mine in it. Like a face filter with this would be really cool. Maybe this would be a cool face filter as well. This would be a great face filter. Yeah.
Cool. I am Katana.
Player one.
I fell in love with Katana. I always used to pretend that Scorpion and Katana had like a really hot love affair, and I would always pretend to be Scorpion. And then I was like, I found a model of Katana. I was like, fuck, let's just make her like super bougie and rich. And I put like a Gucci shawl on her, and I love that one. This one's, I think, my most viewed piece ever. I was going through a dry spell. I remember this specifically. I was like, fuck, I can't make shit. And I was so pissed off. And she was like, well, have you like got any new things, anything you want to try? I was like, I kind of want to try something with bees, and I have this cool face. And she was like, sick. Why don't you just like make a honeycomb like coming out of a face? I was like, fuck, that's cool. Sure. I think like the pop culture influences were 100% Mortal Kombat, Need for Speed, Grand Theft Auto, and then like Dragon Ball Z, all that kind of thing, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! So all of that like somehow in its, I don't know how, but it kind of like works into what I do. Because I mean, it's where I'm from, so. I specifically remember Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's theme song because it had like the same riff as the Avril Lavigne Girlfriend song. Or was it Skater Boy? One Avril Lavigne song. This was great. A lot of people hated the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, but I loved it. Now Pegasus, he was a queer icon. I think a lot of my shit is because of Pegasus. Pegasus Cartoon World. This changed my whole life. This was cool as fuck. And Pegasus saying, Kaiba, my boy.
An entire magical cartoon world. Welcome, Kaiba. to Toon World.
Amazing. Pegasus was a queer icon, 100%. He was gay as fuck. Also, I do believe Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a little queer, 100%. Scorpion versus Sub-Zero, it goes hard.
Scorpion. Sub-Zero.
A year ago, I wasn't able to survive off of like my craft, but now I'm supporting I'm supporting my whole family, which is like me, my girlfriend, my dog, our cat. Like, we have a little family, and I'm actually able to support us. It might not be the best advice, and it's probably fucking stupid, but for me, I need like the harshest thing to happen in order for me to like push myself through it. So I dropped out of school. I put like everything I had into this. There were a lot of times where like I didn't have proper food to eat, and I was like, there were times when I'd go to bed hungry, but I would just like keep fucking doing the shit. And everybody was pissed off with me. They were like, why don't you just get a job and stop being such a like baby about it, you know? I was like, if I get a job, then what? Then I'm gonna become complacent, so I'm not gonna be able to spend like any time being able to actually work on my craft. So I kind of just put everything I had into this. But I think it depends what situation you're in, you know? Like, I still come from a place of privilege and like a place of a place of privilege that I was able to do that, you know? I think the step is to just put as much of yourself into it. That's my first step, was put everything you can into it. If you feel like this is the thing you want to do, then you can't be like half-hearted, you know? You know, I didn't come straight out of like high school and be like, fuck, this is it. And I didn't come straight out of uni and be like, fuck, this is it. Because then I would have studied it, you know? I think you just need to fuck around with a bunch of shit before you know what you want to do. If you think this is it, cool. But also don't forget to maybe experiment, you know? I think a lot of people think that if they've done one thing, then they just need to stick to it. But it's never too late to try something new and then completely change your path, you know? Yeah, that's another thing. Like, don't turn down any job, I think. Everything I've accepted so many jobs where I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I've never done this shit before. And like, I learned on the spot, you know. I still got paid for shit that I've never done before, just because I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna dedicate at least like a good 10 hours a day trying to figure out how to do this, and then I'm gonna fucking do it. I'm gonna perfect it, and I'm gonna now add this to the list of things I can do, you know? You gotta fake it till you make it.